I'll tell you personally, the people that you see like Irv, Ja, the people that are involved in the business aspect are.
In the music world, there's one piece of advice everyone stands by: never get on 50 Cent's bad side. And honestly, they're right. Lots of people have learned that the hard way. One of them was Irv Gotti. He even said, "I swear on my dead father, Ja Rule would have been finished, Chris Gotti would have been finished, they would have been dead." What's wild is this all happened when 50 Cent was still coming up in the rap game, while Irv Gotti was already a big deal, running his label with Ja Rule as his top artist. But 50 didn't care about any of that. He went straight for the throat, and their beef became one of the nastiest in hip-hop. Believe me, the people around like Irv Gotti, they know how serious 50 can get when it's war.
You get in all at one time. You make everybody that you feel like is somebody go, who's 50 Cent?
Ja Rule.
GU, but that wasn't the case. Yes, 50 got injured, but it was more of a scratch than the serious stabbing they tried to make it out to be. 50 got stabbed that day, right? He didn't get stabbed, shut the up with that, okay? He had a scratch. She got cut, they called it a stabbing, and it sounded more graphic than it actually was, so I use it, but EY like it's like, I 3 stitches a scratch. Then there's the infamous shooting. 50 Cent getting shot 9 times is one of hip-hop's most talked about stories. While the main culprit behind the attack was Supreme McGriff, a notorious figure in the streets, people couldn't help but speculate that Irv Gotti might have had a hand in it. Why? Well, Irv and Supreme were tight, so the idea of Irv being involved didn't seem too far-fetched. Plus, Irv didn't do himself any favors when he made a comment saying it must have been Satan who saved 50 after the shooting. To a lot of people, that sounded like he wished 50 hadn't survived. Maybe Satan saved him cause he's a great engine of chaos. I don't think God would save somebody who moves like that. Everything you think of 50 is just negative. He's just an engine of negativity, beef, chaos. But whether or not Irv was directly involved in the shooting, one thing was clear: 50 wasn't going to let it slide. After recovering, he came back with a vengeance. He didn't just go after Irv Gotti, didn't just go after 50 Cent. He went after the whole crew and practically took down their entire organization. By the time everything settled, it was clear who came out on top. Today, 50 Cent is a huge mogul, while Irv Gotti's influence has really faded. But there's a lot more to this story, so let's break it down and take a closer look. According to Chris Gotti, Irv's brother, the whole feud between 50 Cent and Irv's crew might have started over something as small as a perceived slight at a party back in the day. It's crazy how something so small can turn into something so big. Shooting the music video for Ja Rule's For Life, afterward they threw a party in Queens, and 50 Cent, who was still pretty unknown at the time, was invited because he was familiar with some of the MCA crew. He had a party at Amazora in Queens, and 50 knows Black Child. He knows CD was invited too.
Talk to me about 50 in this case. I'm gonna say,
but that's just one version of event, and honestly, not many people buy the stories that have been told. Both Ja Rule and 50 Cent have shared different versions of how everything really went down. According to 50, the beef started after his friend Troy robbed Ja Rule. Later, when 50 and Ja ran into each other at a club, 50 tried to clear the air. But Ja assumed 50 had something to do with the robbery. 50 explained it like this: "A friend of mine robbed Ja Rule, and I'm in the club and I see him. I'm like, what's up? But Ja sees me talking to the guy who robbed him, and he thinks, oh, I shouldn't even talk to this dude." The kid who robbed Ja Rule was someone 50 knew well, someone he grew up with. That misunderstanding was the spark that lit the fire, and before long, the two were exchanging diss tracks back and forth. Once things started heating up, of course, Irv Gotti felt the need to step in and defend his artist, Ja Rule. By that time, Ja was already a powerhouse in the industry, while 50 was still an up-and-comer trying to make a name for himself. They probably thought they could crush him easily. Spoiler alert, they were dead wrong. Irv Gotti went to extreme lengths trying to shut 50 down. For instance, Irv admitted to blackballing 50 from getting signed by major record labels. He used his connections and influence to keep 50 out of the industry, trying to block him at every turn. I blocked it. Despite all of that, 50 proved to be unstoppable. Not only did he survive the attempts to bury him, but he flipped the script entirely. He became a global sensation. Dropping 50 Cent didn't just win the beef. He completely crushed Irv Gotti's whole empire. With hit albums and successful businesses, he came out on top. Today, 50 is a household name. known for everything from music to TV, while Irv Gotti and his crew are struggling to stay relevant. It seems like Irv is still bitter about how everything turned out. He keeps showing up in interviews trying to rewrite history. One minute, he's claiming he's at peace and full of love, and the next, he's throwing shade and bashing 50 all over again. He'll say things like, "I'm a happy guy, I have," but then go right back to talking trash. It's like he can't let it go.
He got stabbed that day, right? He didn't get stabbed, right?
Right, shut the f up with that.
Okay. He got cut.
Fans have called him out for being two-faced, and many argue that they don't blame 50 for still clapping back. After all, if someone spent years sabotaging you and even tried to end your life, would you just let it go now? Let's dig deeper into the details. This legendary feud started to take shape when 50 Cent began making smaller media appearances, letting everyone know he was coming for Ja Rule. Around the same time, Ja started acknowledging 50 publicly, but only to brush him off as someone just trying to get attention. But 50 wasn't backing down. He doubled down on the disrespect, clapping back in interviews, and making it clear that Ja Rule was a fraud who couldn't match his street credibility. As the talk in the streets kept building, tensions between the two finally reached a boiling point, and both rappers were ready to go all in. They were both booked to perform at the same venue in Atlanta and ended up running into each other at a hotel. What followed was a tense verbal showdown, with Ja Rule making it clear how angry he was about 50's diss track. But here's where it gets crazy. Ja Rule was holding a baseball bat during this confrontation, which he had apparently brought out on stage earlier. As the situation started to heat up, 50 Cent wasn't about to let Ja swing that bat. Before Ja could even make a move, 50 sucker punched him right in the face, and a scuffle broke out between their crews, causing everyone to scatter. Now this is where the story started to diverge. According to Ja Rule, 50 Cent started clout chasing after the fight, telling everyone that he had snatched Ja's chain. Ja denied this, claiming that both he and 50 dropped their chains during the scuffle, with some people saying 50's crew picked up Ja's chain. "I had the chain going the hotel, you show me the chain. Maris had it, everybody his son had it, anybody Jr. It was just." After that, word started spreading in the hood about what happened. Their next major confrontation went down at the Hit Factory studio, where chaos erupted. During the chaos, 50 got scratched by a kitchen knife. Unfortunately, some other, less street-oriented people were also in the studio working with G-Unit, and they ended up getting injured in the madness. One of these non-street folks filed a police report, which led to Black Child being arrested for the stabbings. As a result, the NYPD issued an order of protection against anyone involved, forcing them to stay away from 50 Cent and his associates. This document would later become a key piece in the ongoing beef with Ja Rule, and others using it as so-called proof that 50 Cent had snitched on them. But as serious as things were getting with Ja Rule and Inc., the streets were becoming even more dangerous for 50 Cent. At this point, 50 was starting to build a buzz in the hood with his music, especially after dropping the track How to Rob with the Mad Rapper in mid-1999. This tongue-and-cheek track saw 50 Cent jokingly naming big rappers. 50 Cent started making waves in the industry by boldly claiming he was going to rob people. Naturally, dissing the entire rap game didn't sit well with everyone, but it did earn 50 some serious clout. Behind the scenes, though, some people in the industry were starting to get annoyed. By the year 2000, 50 had clearly developed a taste for gaining attention by airing out people's dirty laundry. After the success of How to Rob, he decided to take things even further, dropping another track where he named a bunch of gangsters he knew from the streets of New York, one of them being Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the same guy who'd been tied to some serious street drama. Helped Ja Rule get his chain back in early 2050. Song Ghetto Corn started making the rounds in the streets of New York, and that's when things really began to turn against him. Prince and Respect You Slow I'm Break It Down. Supreme was the businessman, and Prince was the things escalated to a whole new level when allegedly someone from Supreme's crew was dispatched to handle 50 Cent once and for all. On May 24th, 2050 Cent was famously shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house, but miraculously survived. Things were looking bleak for 50 Cent after he got shot. He was seriously injured, out of commission, and completely blacklisted from the rap game. Picture this. 50 is laying in a hospital bed, barely hanging on, stewing in rage, and getting hungrier for revenge with every passing day. He's stuck on the sidelines, unable to make any moves, while his biggest enemies, Ja Rule and Irv Gotti, were out there living their best lives. With 50 out of the picture, Ja Rule was on fire, going on a chart run like no other, racking up Grammy nominations and dominating the airwaves. By the time 2002 rolled around, Ja Rule was everywhere, while 50 Cent seemed to have vanished. What Ja and Irv Gotti didn't realize was that 50 was quietly lurking in the shadows, sharpening his skills, his pen, and his sword, waiting for the right moment. He was plotting the biggest comeback the rap game had ever seen. After getting shot and blacklisted, 50 Cent became persona non grata in the industry. No one wanted to work with him. The situation was so bad that he had to travel all the way to Canada just to find a studio that would let him record, far away from all the drama back home. 50 Cent started laying the groundwork for his comeback. He recorded dozens of tracks, planning every move carefully. The first song he dropped after getting shot was appropriately titled Foo. It was part of his mixtape Guess Who's Back, which was a mix of old and new tracks that he distributed on his own. On that tape, 50 wasn't holding him back. He directly addressed the shooting, even speculating by name who might have been behind it. Now, as far as Ja Rule, of Gotti and Supreme were concerned, 50 Cent
was done.
Ja Rule and Irv Gotti thought they had buried 50 Cent. In their minds, he was no longer a threat. So, when 50's comeback mixtape didn't make a huge splash right away, Ja wasn't worried. But what Ja didn't see coming was that someone else in the industry was about to stumble across 50's tape, and that would change everything. In 2002, 50 Cent's lawyer sent a copy of Guess Who's Back to Eminem's manager, Paul Rosenberg. When Eminem heard it, he was blown away. Without wasting any time, Eminem flew 50 out to LA to work with him, and that's where everything began to shift. Him and Dr. Dre. And while the rest is history, as they say, that trip changed everything for 50. He ended up signing a $1 million deal with Eminem and Dr. Dre, officially joining the Interscope and Shady Records family. From that point on, 50 Cent was getting heavily mentored by two of the biggest names in the game, and they helped him craft his debut album, a true masterpiece. But before they got too deep into the process, Eminem and Dr. Dre sat 50 down for a real talk. Man, they told him to stay focused and avoid getting into beef with Ja Rule. That meeting with Eminem would later be referenced in his song like Toy Soldiers. But 50 being 50, he couldn't just let it slide. He started throwing subtle jabs at Ja Rule, subliminal shots here and there. Of course, Ja Rule and Murder Inc. weren't going to take it quietly. They fired back, spreading stories about how 50 got stabbed at the Hit Factory and then filed an order of protection afterward. They tried to twist the narrative, making it seem like 50 was a full-blown snitch, claiming he specifically asked for a restraining order against Ja Rule. This whole coordinated smear campaign drove 50 Cent straight into battle mode, and he responded by dropping some of the hardest diss tracks aimed at Ja Rule, including Wanksta and I Smell P. At this point, Eminem and Dr. Dre were cool with. By the time January 2003 rolled around, everything took a drastic turn for the worse for Ja Rule and Irv Gotti, and it felt like the universe had flipped on them overnight. First came 50 Cent's Into Club, a song that changed the game completely. This wasn't just another rap hit, it was a cultural moment. The track shot straight to the top of the Billboard charts and stayed there, becoming the hottest song on the planet. It was so massive that it earned 2 Grammy nominations, and suddenly, everyone from die-hard fans to industry insiders was talking about 50 Cent. Rap fans to suburban kids who had never even heard of Gun It was bumping it. For 50, it was a career-defining moment, but for More Inc., it was like the first domino in a series of disasters that would soon follow. Just as I&D Club was dominating the airwaves, the feds showed up at Murder Inc.'s doorstep, kicking the door down. Their offices were raided as part of a massive investigation trying to link Irv and Chris Gotti to Kenneth Supreme McGriff, who had just been arrested while on the run. The government was trying to paint Rink as more than as 50 Cent's success skyrocketed. Irv and Chris Gotti found themselves in a battle they never saw coming. Suddenly, their label was being accused of being a front for criminal activity. They were faced with serious allegations of laundering drug money for Supreme McGriff. On top of that, they were dragged into an even darker narrative: the attempt on 50 Cent's life. According to court testimony, Supreme McGriff himself bragged about being behind the attack. A former associate of McGriff, John Reagan, took the stand and shared chilling details about the ambush, describing how McGriff and his team of shooters gathered afterward to discuss the attack. Assuming 50 was dead, Supreme said, "I got him." Reagan testified. At first, Reagan didn't even know who McGriff was talking about, but then McGriff explained it was 50 Cent. He had been hit so many times and there was so much blood, they were convinced there was no way he could survive. Reagan went on to describe how McGriff talked about 50 squirming and trying to shield himself from the bullets with his hands. Meanwhile, the authorities were trying to tie the Gotti brothers to the shooting as well. They claimed there were text messages flying. The situation wasn't looking good for Irv, Chris, McGriff, and their associates. Within half an hour of the attack, things had spiraled out of control. The Gottis were also being accused of knowingly laundering McGriff's dirty money through Murder Incorporated. With all his assets frozen and his reputation in tatters, McGriff couldn't even afford a decent lawyer and ended up with a court-appointed attorney. In 2007, he was sentenced to life in prison. Irv and Chris managed to avoid prison time, but their label was never the same. The federal investigation, combined with 50 Cent's meteoric rise, effectively brought Murder Incorporated to its knees. 50 Cent definitely got the last laugh in this beef, but honestly, when doesn't he?